Now with more side dishes, this is the Soul Podcast. I'm King Sejong, reminding you that there is no I in Korea and no F in Hangul. And here are your hosts, Emma Kalka and Joe McPherson.
And welcome to the Soul Podcast. This is Joe.
And Emma.
Thank you for joining us this evening as we, I was going to eat some seafood tonight. I guess I'm not going to eat any seafood, but
probably, no, actually now is the time to eat the seafood. It's 2 years from now that you might want to question that decision.
Yeah. We're just going to jump straight into one of the topics tonight is there's some radioactive water going to be released from Japan.
Yeah, it's been basically like the biggest news thing for this week since Japan announced it, which, I mean, there was some forewarning. Everybody kind of knew this was coming because they've been talking about it for a very long time. Yeah. Or for a while now, that they were going to release radioactive water that they used at the Fukushima nuclear power plant to cool down the cores when everything started melting right after the tsunami.
Treated radioactive water.
Treated, right. Yes. Sorry. But it's still going to be slightly radioactive. So they made the official formal announcement on Tuesday that they are definitely going to do this. This is happening. They're going to, release this water into the ocean, and basically everybody within the vicinity of Japan is, losing their shit.
Yeah.
Understandably so. Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that goes into this. Like, they're not just like, because they currently have like 1.25 million tons of this water that they're storing in containers at the plant. And the issue is they're going to run out of space next year to store this water. Yeah. So this has been an issue that they've been dealing with for years, because they knew that they can't continue to store this water at the plant. They have to get rid of it somehow.
Yeah, it's been a decade.
Yeah, and like storing it is just not, it's not a good option either, because it's not great for that area, even though like there's so much radiation in that area that's going to be there forever. Well, not forever, but for really, 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 really long time.
Yeah.
But they're like, we're running out of storage space, so we got to find a way to somehow dispose of this nuclear waste. And I guess they said they looked at all these other options, and their best option, they feel, Japan, the government, whatever, that they feel is to put it through this treatment system. It's called ALPS. And it gets rid of pretty much most of the radioactive material except for one isotope, tritium, which can't be rid of through this process. But they're going to dilute it. And it's not like they're not dumping like all 1.2 million tons at once. They're going to do it gradually over the span of 10 to 20 years.
Oh, good. I love prolonged exposure.
Yeah, well, I mean, they can't dump it. They got to like dump it, let it disperse, dump it, let it disperse. But there's been like South Korea was immediately like, no, don't do this. They're looking and going to there's this oceans tribunal, this international tribunal for oceans.
Yeah.
That they're thinking about going to and trying to file an injunction. The IAEA is part of this. They've actually supported this decision. and they've come out and said, like, this is a thing that other nuclear plants do to get rid of their nuclear waste.
Yeah.
And it's a proven process. If you do it right, it won't hurt the the environment, and it won't pose a danger to humans if it's done right. Japan has already reached out to the IAEA and say, hey, yo, can you help us out? And they're like, yeah, well, cool, we'll help you out. We'll send a team. We'll make sure this is done right. The US has actually come out publicly and said, we support this decision.
Mm-hmm.
So Japan right now, it's just like, why are y'all freaking out? Like, we got the IAEA, they're with us. The US is with us. Like, we're going to do this.
Yeah. Well, I'm okay because I'm currently doing research on the history of modern disasters in South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most common patterns we see is not paying attention to anything until it's smack dab in front of you.
Right, yeah.
Waiting until the disaster happens before you even start thinking about it. Even
before
though
you start thinking,
we saw it way in the distance. Years and years ago, we knew this was coming. But we're not going to... Nope, we're going to be surprised when it actually happens.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they cannot start dumping the water for around 2 years because they have to build the facilities to properly treat it and store it before they start dumping it. Because if they dumped it right now, there would be some massive problems. But so they have to treat it through this ALPS process first. And so they have to build the facilities and then start the process. So they said the earliest that they would be able to start dumping this treated water would be 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yeah. And what they're saying is they're going to dilute tritium to a point where it's 1/7 of the standard that the WHO has for drinking water. Because apparently, tritium is also, it's a naturally occurring isotope as well. So it's already out there. I actually read an article in Forbes by this US nuclear scientist who's been working in trying to find ways to get rid of nuclear waste for like the last 30 years. And his whole point was that there's not a lot of people really know and understand about this isotope tritium. And he's like, there's actually, like, it's been studied and there have been, no... Oh, yes, I know. Nuclear waste is yeah.
Pippin.
It's something we should all care about, right, Pippin? But he was actually saying that there's been nothing on record showing that tritium has harmed the environment or humans.
Okay.
So apparently it's like the least radioactive isotope, if I understood it correctly.
Okay.
I'm not a nuclear scientist. I've just read a few articles on it so I can better understand the things that I have to edit. But yeah, there's a big debate over like how potentially dangerous it could be to the environment, to people. And some people are saying, oh, it's not going to be that bad. And, oh, this is a practice that is done all over the world. And then other people are like, we're all going to get cancer.
Yeah. Well, I think since we're in East Asia, this whole complex issue is best communicated through a cute mascot.
Yes. What better way is there to learn about the treatment process than little Mr. Tritium?
Mr. Tritium right here.
Little Mr. Tritium. Yes.
Oh, boy. I mean, even Mr. Tritium looks like Mr. Bill, and he's going, oh, no.
Oh, no. Yeah. I saw that and was just like, oh.
How is this reassuring? How is this mascot reassuring?
A little radioactive mascot. Yeah. It's going to make it all better. No.
It looks like
people are not going to be comforted by this, which is why they scrapped it. They were like, oh, we can't solve all our problems with mascots. No.
I think they've tried something like this in the past with something else controversial. But it's like I think it's supposed to be made up of the atomic structure of tritium or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I see two neutrons and one proton or something like that. But they're outside. But how many electrons do we have? And why are they outside of the face?
I know. Shouldn't they be inside? I don't.
It's not reassuring. It's not reassuring, especially with its radioactive cheeks.
I know. I don't know. They do look radioactive. Oh goodness. Yeah, they really were not thinking with that one. Dumping a bunch of water, even though it's treated, it's still going to be mildly radioactive into the Pacific Ocean.
Oh my!
You're not going to make that easier by creating cute mascots.
That's what I have.
Yeah, but I mean, for very obvious reasons, this has become yet another point of contention to argue about.
Oh my!
But I mean, there's hopefully the IAEA is involved in this process, so one would hope that, and they seem on board with it. They seem like, yeah, this is a good idea, or maybe not a good idea, but the best option, I guess. I'm assuming getting rid of nuclear waste is not an easy thing to do.
No, I don't think so either. No.
Not a very easy thing to do.
Not an expert on it, even though I was brought in to try to be an expert at times. I won't go into that. Oh no, I won't go into that. Back when I was a producer for a talk show, I had to suddenly become an expert on the IAEA. Yeah, whatever. I had to become an expert on it like in one day, so I could be able to come up with good questions for our guest on the show.
Goodness.
Oh my goodness, that was tough.
I mean, it's a very complicated, difficult to understand situation. Like you honestly, you can't boil it down to like a few points or not. But I mean, it is, for me, I feel like it's reassuring that the IAEA is going to be involved.
Yeah.
So there is going to be some sort of international standard that they're going to be held to. They're going to be watching consulting on the process. So if this does happen in 2 years, one can hope that it goes according to plan.
Okay.
I fortunately will not be here to see those repercussions.
Oh,
you're gonna have to fill me in, like, if fish start growing two heads.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
I know. I mean, I do think there's something that's just initially like a knee-jerk reaction when it comes to anything nuclear is to, oh my God, we're all gonna get cancer, everybody's gonna die.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot of very complicated science involved with it that I think the average person doesn't know or understand. And I think maybe in this situation, just education is a good idea. Like if it is actually a really safe process that's not going to hurt the environment and people, then, we need a really good education plan for that. And then we also need oversight to make sure that it is actually a safe process and they're not just like bullshitting us.
With mascots.
I don't think the IAEA uses mascots. I think they're just going to use science. But still, like even the IAEA needs people to keep them in check. So.
But this is hurting trilateral talks right now.
Yeah, well, that's the rumor.
It's the rumor.
I told you that earlier.
Wait, yeah, but I know it's the rumor, but we're not a hard news outlet. We can post rumors as long as we say it is a rumor. It is a rumor.
Actually, no, I mean it's in articles. It's in articles, and they say speculation is blah blah blah.
Okay.
So U.S., Japan, and South Korea were supposed to have trilateral talks at the end of this month, and then today that they announced that they were going to be postponed. So there's two main groups of thought here for pushing it back. One is that the U.S. is not. It's because the U.S. is not finished with their North Korea review, and they won't be finished until maybe end of this month or early next month, and that's why it got.
Don't have an ambassador.
Yes, we still don't have an ambassador. And then the other one is that just Japan and Korea are so angry with each other.
Yeah,
partially because of the nuclear wastewater issue.
That we call that spring.
Basically.
Japan, when Korea's pissed at Japan. It's like it's like the annual Dokdo flare up or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, those are the two big groups of thought for why it's being pushed back.
Okay.
But I mean, hey, they also announced that Moon Jae-in is going to the U.S. next month for his first summit with Joe Biden, and it's actually Biden's second. It'll be Biden's second summit. His first summit is tomorrow, today, whatever that is.
Oh! So South Korea's his second summit he's doing that.
Yeah.
Wow! Ahead of Japan. That's something.
No. Japan's this weekend.
Oh, darn!
Japan's the first one. South Korea's.
Darn! So close.
So close. No, Suga's already in the U.S. right now. They're going to have a summit where they're going to talk about the denuclearization of North Korea and regional security and security in general and all those fun topics.
Oh boy, I'm feeling so secure now.
So yeah, you should.
Are we feeling more secure that Oh Se-hoon is mayor now? What? Oh, a weird taste in my mouth when I said that. Oh.
No.
I don't know.
Well, Oh Se-hoon he's really big on these self-diagnostic kits.
Yeah.
You okay?
I'm hearing otherwise sane people on my Facebook in Korea saying, well, it's changed. I'm glad to see some change happen. I'm like, yeah, I remember in 2016, everyone was happy to see change happen. Oh my gosh. We don't remember this guy.
It feels like everybody's just kind of forgotten what it was like the last time he was mayor. He's been mayor twice, and we gave him a third chance.
Yeah, why?
It's like third time's the charm.
Why do we assume competence? It's
well, and I did have a very kind of funny, semi-serious conversation with some of my coworkers because he's been really pushing self-diagnostic tests. And so I asked the question oh, okay, so what are these tests? Because I've heard that there is a COVID test. It's like a spit test where you spit in something and you use your saliva to tell if you have COVID. And they're like, oh no, you have to, it's still the same up the nose. And I'm like,
who wants to do that to themselves?
I'm just like, this sounds like a really, really bad idea.
You trust people to stick that up?
Hand out COVID tests and be like, you have to stick yourself up the nose for this, because the people who administer these tests, they're really fast at it, and I mean it's still slightly painful.
Yeah,
but they had to train. They had to train to do that properly. God. Because you have to stick it far enough to get enough whatever for the test, and then not seriously injure somebody by poking them too far. I don't know.
I love your scientific
I don't-
way of explaining this.
I'm not a
To get there
scientist.
something, there's stuff. The stuff.
Like
Get
the
that-
stuff that's up the mucus is that. I mean, it's not.
the
whatever.
sample. Yeah, I know the sample.
If it was just mucus, they could like run it up like in your nostrils because there should be a lot of mucus there, right? So whatever, it's like something far, whatever it is that's farther back up your your nasal cavity that they have to get. I don't know.
Yeah.
For me, I'm just like, if you gave me one of those and I had to stick it up my own nose, I would probably puncture my brain.
I'd be scared to do it. I wouldn't be able to do it right. And then try to do it to my child.
Yeah,
Oh
well,
my gosh. Do it to your child?
Well, and see, that's the thing. Just like giving these test kits to people who don't know how to use them properly. The thing is it's not going to be accurate because people are going to be too afraid to like really get it up there. So they're not going to get enough specimen. How's that for a science?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
They're not going to get enough specimen for the test to accurately show if they are COVID positive. Which was one of the big arguments because apparently this is not the first time this has come up. And so I guess when it came up before, because your average person doesn't know how to administer the test, especially to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's a good chance that they're not going to get enough specimen for it to be accurate. And then of course there's me sitting off to the side to be like, yeah. And then some dumbass is going to poke themselves in the brain. And they're like, oh, I mean, people do stupid things all the time. That was my thought. I'm like,
yeah,
somebody is going to manage to seriously injure themselves with this test.
I mean, we agree
Not that
that
hard, in my opinion. I would injure myself with this test, I feel.
Yeah, we agree that the government started off pretty well, and then this past 6 months has been like the last season of Game of Thrones, just falling apart.
Left and right.
Because I mean, just the confusing levels that we were dealing with all the time, and just
which we're still under the confusing level one. They haven't changed it yet.
Really confusing.
They released an outline for a new, hopefully less confusing program, but they were supposed to pass. I don't know, maybe this month. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but I haven't heard anything about it, so I don't know.
Yeah, and I will say, even though I do have a small background in political talk radio, when I came to Korea, I made this observation that the political parties here are not as cleanly cloven. As in, I joked one time, right is left and left is right in Korea. In many ways.
Hey Rob, I hope your swab came negative. Sorry.
Oh.
Roboseo commented on YouTube.
Oh,
he said,
Rob's here.
Ayo suckers, I got a swab this week.
Oh, awesome. We got people watching our live.
Yay, somebody's watching us live.
We are between 7:30 or 8 on a Friday evenings. Usually, we are not keeping with any schedule.
But anyway, you were talking about political parties.
Way back when I was co-host of Morning Special on EBS, we had one of our weekly guests was a professor, I think from SNU, political science professor. And after the show one day, I kind of joked, it's like, in Korea, right is left and left is right. And he stopped and said, yeah, you're kind of right. Yeah, because the Progressive Party here tends to also be the most xenophobic party as well.
Yeah, which is not... Yeah.
Yeah, I remember... when Jasmine Lee was first elected, now she was on the conservatives, whatever they were calling themselves back then.
Korean National Party.
Yeah, and she isn't really you wouldn't really would call her a conservative. but
I would not really call her a conservative.
yeah, but the attacks against her from the quote left were all these racist, misogynistic attacks and xenophobic attacks.
Like, yeah, the main liberal party here is not super liberal.
Or it's populist, nativist populist.
Right. Yeah,
nativist populist.
That's a better way to describe it. Like if you want like a true liberal party in Korea, you're gonna have to look to the minor parties.
Yeah, because we talked about that in our last show. The some of the candidates sounded really interesting.
Really, yeah. Like, I was like, this would be a great person to be mayor. And then at the same time, it's like, but they're not gonna be mayor.
Yeah,
I wish that they could.
But you know these.
I mean, yeah, Korea does.
These pushes to test all foreign, these blanket testing of all foreigners, these were all done by liberal governments, supposedly liberal governments.
Right. Yeah.
These new restrictions on the F-27 came directly from Moon Jae-in's office. Moon Jae-in himself put these restrictions on the F-27 visa, which is one reason you're leaving. And another friend of ours is leaving because of that. So now F-27s can't own businesses now?
Well, and they did like it was a blanket thing. They changed a bunch of things for the F-27 and the F-299 at the same time. I'm actually on an F-299.
Okay.
But no, they just like the F-27 was already difficult to get. The changes made it difficult to keep.
Yeah, it's like
because
it's hard to get. They want quality foreigners, and then they're just making it harder and harder. And now they're saying like you got to make a certain amount of money, and you got to be this age, and it's a very narrow cup to put yourself in.
They want young, rich foreigners, is what they want.
Yeah, it's all for image. It's all for the optics.
Right. And, you know, I spent months agonizing over whether or not I was going to be able to renew my visa, a visa that will have had for 5 years.
Yeah.
When it comes up for renewal, and I'm just like, okay, so I was like, okay, these are the things that I have to make happen in the next year if I want to keep this visa. Is it worth it? That was the question that I ultimately had to ask myself. Is it worth it for me to go jump through like even more? I had to jump through flaming hoops to get the visa in the first place. And now I'm going to have to jump through more to keep it. And I'm like, is it worth it to go through this agony every 3 years to stay in Korea? And I realized it's not, you know?
Yeah. And it just kills my brain that whenever there's, oh gosh, it kills my brain to even say this. I've just noticed this pattern that when there are conservatives in power here, things are easier for foreigners here.
Yes. Yeah.
I hate this. I hate saying this.
And honestly, like, I wouldn't have been able to get this visa and without, because they eased the requirements for it. And so it went into in effect in 2014. I think they came up with the changes, in 2015. And I think they made the changes in 2014, which was under Park Geun-hye.
Yeah. And I think it was under Lee Myung-bak, the whole Seoul Global Centers were popularized when he was mayor. That was when he was president, I think I'm not sure if it was him or Park Geun-hye as well, but they made the E7 visa a lot easier to get, which E7 is just like a general work visa if you're doing some sort of work that's not teaching English and also not working in a factory. Yeah.
it's that. So if you're just working at a company doing something, you have to get an E7 visa. And like I got my first E7 visa in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, it wasn't extremely difficult because I had work experience in America that counted here.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, it was really difficult. And again, there was like all these documents that you had to get that you didn't have to get when you were working for the E2 visa at the time. So, okay, you good, Morgan?
Is Morgan
Sorry,
making that noise?
That was Morgan. I was like,
was that a problem with her hard drive or something?
No, that was the other dog. So like Pippin is in my lap, and then Morgan just like comes in. He was scratching his ear. I need to take him to the vet and get his ear checked out. I think he's got an ear ouchie, Bubba. But yeah, but I mean, they made things super easy for the E7. I think that was all. I think maybe Imam Bak did some of it, but then it got even easier under Park Geun-hye.
Yeah.
Like I think under Park Geun-hye, that's when they changed it so that you don't have to leave the country. If you're already in the country, you can apply for it and you don't have to leave.
Yeah.
Which I didn't have that, but by that time I had gotten I'd gotten my F299 visa, so I was like, I don't have to renew.
Yeah.
I never have to leave on a visa run again.
Yeah, I got the F5, and I think that was during a conservative administration. But my friend who's lived in Korea about as long as I have is married and has had a business here for a long time and has children. He tried to get an F5 visa this week and couldn't get it. It made it harder.
Yeah, they've made that harder too.
And he studies Korean much harder than I do study Korean, but he actually takes classes while I try to study on the subway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like what some of these requirements don't take into consideration is that a lot of professionals, the type of people that they want, they don't have time, especially if they're living and working in Korea already. They don't really have the time to go to Korean classes.
Yeah, and unless you speak Japanese or a similar language, if you're coming in from a mostly Indo-European language background, Korean's a difficult one. You don't just pick it up unless.
Right.
I have this thing is like I've lived in Korea for 17 years, and I can count on one hand the people I know who speak fluent Korean who didn't either A, grow up with a Korean parent, or B, didn't quit everything and study it full time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people, a lot of the foreigners you see on TV that speak fluent Korean. I mean, even Sam Hamilton said that right out front that he studied Korean full time so he could be on TV. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these people do that. That's what you have to do. I think the YouTuber Dave, I think he studied Korean full time. That's how he's so fluent at it. Most of the people in Musuda, they're studying Korean full time. Yeah, I'm trying to think of people. I think maybe Jacko, who was a guest on the show.
I know Jacko. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's one person who didn't quit, who was working while learning Korean, and he's gotten really good at it. I'm trying to think others who are really, you could call fluent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much everybody I know who's fluent, they at some point in time they stopped and they were taking ohakwan classes.
But before they hit 30.
Yeah. Yeah. And I never had that time. And then now, like, the requirement, they're moving away from topic as like the guideline to
TOPIK, which is the TESOL version of TESOL, the standardized test for how well you speak Korean. Yeah.
Right. So they're moving away from that to KIP, which is the program that the government started.
Oh boy.
Yeah, which it's levels 0 to 5. With
Okay.
5 being not a language class, but it's actually like a social integration class.
Okay.
So it's basically like a social. You learn about Korean history and the Korean government and all that, but it's all in Korean.
And yeah.
But so they want people to pass levels for KIP. But the thing is like the KIP program was not created for working professionals. It was created for women who come to Korea, who marry Korean men.
I was going to joke the part of this is teaching Vietnamese women how to cook Korean food for their parents-in-law.
Well, to teach them how to speak Korean first and then.
Yeah.
So the
how
way
to
that
bow politely to your mother-in-law and everything. Yeah.
Right. So the way that the scheduling structure is not set up for working professionals. It's set up for, stay-at-home moms and housewives and people who work part-time who don't have full. So it's really, really, really difficult for working professionals.
It's another one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
We're seeing here. My criticism of a lot of Korean learning systems is they don't teach practical Korean that I need for my everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
What I call taxi driver Korean, as in whenever I'm in a long ride with a taxi driver and he wants to strike a conversation with me in Korean, there's a standard set of questions they tend to ask. And how many questions can I get through before we hit the wall? And I can't understand. They say something I can't understand. Because they do the simple ones. The simple ones is like, where are you from? How long have you been in Korea? Are you married? Things like that.
Why are you not married?
That's do you like Korean food? They ask us that.
Oh no, I don't get asked that. I get, where are you from? How long have you been in Korea?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't get asked if I get married. I get told that I'm married. Oh, so you're married? I'm like, no, I'm not. And they're like, oh, do you like Korean men?
Oh gosh, okay, you get that route. But no, I sort of get that when they ask if I've.
That's an awkward question to answer in English, and I'm just like, it's like, well, I end up like piecing together some sort of answer. It's like, they're okay, but I'm just really busy right now. It's like, I work a lot.
하지만 한국 남자 좋아해요.
They're like, wait, and they kind of look at me and they're like, but you're an English teacher, right? And I'm like, no, because like, there's not really, no one's ever told me a Korean word for copy editor. And honestly, like on all of my Korean forms, just editor. So I just always say 기자 because it's easier than trying to explain what I do. And it's kind of the same thing. I'm working in news media, so I'm just like,
news
기자. I'm a reporter, and they're like, oh, and then they get it and they stop asking me questions.
Okay, then I get there. Yeah, I get them.
Like, thank you.
But they ask me if I'm married to a Korean woman, and then I say yes, and they go, oh, thumbs up.
No one talks to me anymore. And I am so happy for that. Like every once in a while I'll get like, oh, where are you from? How long have you been here? And then I usually just like look out the window and refuse to make eye contact, and they get the picture. They're like, she does not want to talk right now.
I try to use the nonverbal thing, see if people can get it that if I have earphones in, I don't want to be talked to. But some people don't get that. Still, they don't see that as a nonverbal cue that I don't want to be talked to.
Like, just take me to.
I just want to look out the window like Bill Murray at the beginning of Lost in Translation.
Yeah, and I got that way because I was so tired of having really awkward, uncomfortable conversations with taxi drivers. Because it used to be every single time I got into a cab, it would be a really, really awkward conversation. Because being like a single woman, and I mean, and want to dissect why I'm still single and
what is wrong with you?
What
and how can we fix it?
Like about Korean men, because I must be single because I don't like Korean men, and I'm like, that has nothing to do with it. And
boy.
then, and if it wasn't that, they wanted to talk about Trump, and I'm like, I really don't want to talk about Trump.
Yeah, I don't want to be a representative of my whole country. I don't. That's what I hate too.
Because then they'll be like, "Oh, do you like Trump?" And I'm just like, I feel like this is a loaded question.
It's like they're violating. They're violating all the 3 things. When I was in bartending school, the 3 things you're not supposed to talk about: religion, politics, and God. No, religion, politics, and sex. Sorry.
I was like, so God is like in its own category?
I know. So basically, they asked you about. Basically, the marriage question is about sex. Then the Trump question is about politics, and next they're going to ask if you know Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior.
Yeah, which I have learned in Korea, saying yes doesn't always get you off the hook.
Yeah, well,
I've tried every
the South
answer.
too. It doesn't get you off.
I've been yes, no. I've like spouted out things that I learned, Bible verses and this and that, and I've even tried saying, actually, I'm a Satanist, and that didn't work either. I'm just like, I don't know nothing works.
I don't know.
No matter what you say, it doesn't work.
I can religiously code switch when needed.
So I'm
an atheist that can talk up the Old and New Testaments pretty well.
Well, apparently nothing I said worked, because the Jehovah Witnesses and the one that thinks that this little old Korean lady is like the mother of God or something.
Oh yeah. Well, they're wanting a donation. That's the only way you're going to get rid of them is giving them a donation.
No, they want to recruit you.
Oh,
I got tricked into going to lunch with them one time, and when I lived in Kunde, they would always come and knock on my door, and I didn't have a peephole, so I never knew who it was. So I would just like open the door and I'm like, oh shit. And the only way I finally learned, because like I want to try to be a nice person and diffuse the situation politely. And then I finally just got to the point where I would open the door, I'd see who it was, because you always know at first glance if you got missionaries on the door. Yeah. At the door. And I would just like I would slam the door shut and lock it and walk away.
And they go back to their groups and they say, I could see the look of Satan in her eyes when she closed the door on me. Because I've heard people say that back home.
And then they just like double down. And
if these are people that are angry at you when you're proselytizing and they're going up against you, it's because Satan has taken control of them.
And they don't stop. I'm so glad since I moved to the Yongsan-gu area that I live in, I don't get missionaries at my door anymore. It's the last, 3 years of living here have been great.
We haven't really been bothered for a long time.
No one I don't know if like they just stopped going door to door. Well, I'm assuming with COVID, yes, they had to. But before that, I'm not sure if they just like, okay, we got to stop doing door to door stuff, or if I just move to an area where they don't do it. But
one unfortunate thing is, we've been living in higher income apartments in living
so
places.
They don't come to your door.
Security's better.
You're too bougie for
security is better here. Mm-hmm. Especially the one I had before this place. I mean, you needed cards and cards and cards to get through multiple layers of security here. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Okay. I will tell you this. Back in my old days in Anyang, we were near a Mormon church, and so we would get the kids from Utah. You'd see them at the bus stop.
That were here on their missions.
Yeah. Every now and then we would strike up a conversation at the bus stop, and they were cool. I liked them. I really wanted. I was tempted to ask them out to go drinking sometime.
And then you remembered they don't drink.
Yeah, but just do something, because they didn't try to proselytize. We just connected because we were foreigners in Korea. They were fine.
I mean, I used to know I mean, not well, like we weren't like friends, but I think we were good enough that I would say that we were kind of friends. We worked together for a long time. Probably the most famous Mormon.
Oh, yeah. Are we thinking of the same one? That got in trouble? Well, a few of them got in trouble. Yes. I
was extremely shocked. I will say
I was on a TV show with him once, and we struck up a conversation, had a good conversation.
I was a weekly reporter on his radio show for like a year.
Yeah, I remember you had a radio show.
So I saw him once a week for like an hour for a year. He was really cool. We got on really well.
For people who weren't familiar, Robert Holly's a long-time Korean-speaking foreigner,
citizen, actually.
came here as a missionary, and had a little bit of a scandal involving drugs and drugs with a man he wasn't married to, and intimate relations with a man he wasn't married to. Yeah.
No one is. If you're a man, you're definitely not married to another man in Korea.
Yeah. But I was just trying to say it discreetly, and which I would honestly. I don't have a problem with any of those things. I mean, as long as you're not hurting people, drugs are fine. And of course, I mean, the worst thing maybe was adultery in that sense. Yeah, I don't. Cool. And this is Korea. That's kind of like a rite of passage is adultery. Oh my God, I'm gonna get in trouble for this podcast.
Oh, you are gonna get in so much trouble for that. But it's true.
Okay, well, why don't I just, before I get myself more in trouble, let's just wrap up. Okay.
Let's end it on that note.
let's get if you're really pissed off at us, join our Patreon. We are at Patreon.
We can piss you off some more.
Yeah, patreon.com/SeoulPodcast. We're starting at just $5 a month. You can get all of our back episodes going back to 2008, where we really said offensive stuff while drunk.
Oh, good Lord.
And we do have a couple of patrons. But yeah, Patreon, if you're not familiar with Patreon, it is a subscriber service where you can support your favorite creators. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at King Sejong, and on Facebook at facebook.com/SeoulPodcast. Currently, we are on YouTube as on my Zen Kimchi account, and you can watch us live on Fridays around 7:30 or 8. Depends on how busy I am trying to get the Dark Side of Soul podcast set up.
But next week is going to be fun, because next time we're going to talk about the awesomeness that is Yoon Yeojung.
Yes, in Minari. We're going to talk about the movie Minari, which I love and I've watched many times.
I'm so excited to talk about this.
Yes. Okay, we're going to do that.
I want to be Yoon Yeojung when I'm old. That's who I want to be.
Yeah, she's someone to aspire to. Yeah.
She's life goals. I'm so ready for this.
So yeah, I think we're going to be less bitchy and more gushing next week. This week was a bitchy week.
Sorry. It's
no, me.
It's on Friday.
It's me. Yeah. It's me. I've been really bitchy. All right.
Well, and honestly, it's Friday.
It's Friday and you're stuck with me and the dogs.
Yeah. At least Pippin was good this time, yeah?
Pippin was good. Yeah. All right. So everyone, until next time, be safe out there.
Bye.
The Soul Podcast is a production of Zen Kimchi International, copyright 2021, under the Creative Commons license. Parts of this podcast may be used for non-commercial purposes if you remember to give us credit. You can contact us at sejong@soulpodcast.com. That's SEJONG@soulpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at King Sejong and on Facebook at facebook.com/SeoulPodcast. For a transcript of this episode, listen to it again and write down what you hear. See you next week. Until then, may your girlfriend never wear high heels for a day of hiking.